Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. Friends, we are back in Murray, Calloway County with attorney Jeff Roberts, and today we're going to talk about all sorts of issues related to back injuries and degenerative disc disease and things like that. Jeff, welcome to the studio, guy.
Hey, Jim, how are you today?
I'm doing well. This is one of those things. The older I get, the more I start worrying about this. So let's figure out kind of from a legal standpoint, especially as it relates to Social Security disability insurance. Different conditions and different types of situations that may actually qualify for some kind of benefits.
Right, and that's I've done Social Security disability law for 30 years now, and I've received a lot of calls over the years over people who had back injuries and having questions on whether their specific type of problem would be covered under Social Security disability and would be something that they could receive Social Security disability for. So it's a topic or an issue that I've been asked about quite a bit during my career.
And I know I started off the episode saying Murray, Calloway County, so we're used to doing that this far into the podcast. But actually, you do have a satellite office now, an additional office up in Hopkinsville, up in Christian County.
Correct, I do. I have a satellite office where I meet clients up in the Hopkinsville area in Christian County. So I do travel and meet clients at other locations as well, if need be, from that standpoint. So, but having that Hopkinsville office has helped me to meet with my clients up in that area.
And you mentioned you've done Social Security cases for the last 30 years or so. But interestingly enough, as a practicing attorney, you also handle personal injury type cases, so car wrecks, motorcycle accidents, things like that, but also workers' comp. And many times those also involve back injuries, which sometimes lead to Social Security claims.
Correct. You can have if the back injury is, the back problems come from a work-related injury, then it can be you can have a workers' compensation or would have a workers' compensation claim in that setting. And if the injury is severe enough, then potentially a Social Security disability claim from that setting as well.
Right. And I know we've done this in a couple of different episodes when we're talking about Social Security disability, but do you want to really kind of explain what is Social Security disability insurance, SSDI? What is that specifically?
Social Security disability, well, the Social Security Administration administers two disability programs. Social Security disability insurance, which is SSDI, or in the other program is Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, because obviously the government's going to make them sound as close to as they could possibly be to confuse people. So Social Security disability or SSDI is paid out to a person based on what they've paid into the system, and there are certain requirements from that standpoint. You've had to pay in you've had to have a sufficient quarters of coverage to be able to receive Social Security disability benefits, and how much you receive is based on how much you've paid into the system. SSI, on the other hand, is paid out based on financial need. So if you've never worked before, you can still potentially receive SSI benefits if you become disabled. And so, but on SSI, they're also going to look at your income, your resources, and usually the home income. If you're married, then they're going to look at the spouse's income as well to see if you meet those the financial need requirements to receive SSI. The disability decision is the same under both programs. Basically, if you're disabled for Social Security disability, you're disabled for SSI. They define the disability the same between the two programs from that standpoint. And some people, depending on what your work history has been and what your wages have been, you can potentially receive SSDI and SSI both. The other difference between the two programs is with SSI. If you're eligible for SSI and receive SSI benefits, you will go on Medicaid coverage from there. With Social Security disability, after you've been on disability for 2 years, then you would go on Medicare coverage at that point in time.
Right, so a little bit different path, but still benefits available. For people who have some level of injury or disability.
You have to be 100% disabled
So
as that term is defined by the Social Security Act. From that standpoint, if incapable of performing substantial gainful activity, exactly the way it's somewhat termed there. So you can actually have a little bit of earnings, and still receive Social Security disability benefits from that standpoint. But if you're capable of working full time, then you're not going to be eligible to receive Social Security disability benefits as a general rule.
That makes sense. So as we get into the back injury type conversation, we're going to focus more on the SSDI. These are people who have been working for a certain amount of time. They've paid into the system. So, we'll start talking about, again, various types of back injuries that may qualify them for. And I'll let you kind of drive on this one. I've always got questions because I learn stuff every time we come down here and have these conversations.
Yes, and really from a practical standpoint, whether it's SSDI, Social Security Disability, or SSI, Supplemental Security Income, the medical condition that causes you to be disabled is handled the same under both programs. The other issues, whether you have worked and paid in the system, whether you meet the financial need requirements, are the differences between the two programs. But with spinal injuries or back injuries, there are different types of injuries that people can receive and have. Some are degenerative problems. Degenerative is basically just saying, over time the body will degenerate and will kind of go down.
Just wears out.
Yeah, it wears itself out from that perspective, and you can develop degenerative disc disease and some other things, bulging disc. Often are associated with that can cause a person to have pain in their system. You can have spinal stenosis, which basically is, my understanding, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving anybody medical advice here, but spinal stenosis is essentially the canal where the spinal cord and the nerves travel before they go out into the body to innervate the different parts of the body. And if that gets narrowed from a variety of reasons, it's called spinal stenosis. From there, it can be the bulging disc is going back into the spinal canal from that standpoint, or bone spurs can be doing that. To cause that issue. But that's one of the other things you'll see if you look at your medical reports, MRI reports, and it may say something about, you have spinal stenosis or there is no stenosis present or something of that nature. You can have nerve root compression or pinched nerve, as it's commonly referred to. From there, the nerves, when they travel down come off the spinal cord, they travel through openings in the spinal column and go to different parts of the body. And especially with herniated disc, that can cause the nerve where it travels out of the spinal canal to be pinched in that area or impinged in that area. That can cause a person to have pain traveling. A lot of times traveling down the path of the nerve. So if it's
that's where the doc might say radiating pain,
exactly,
out to the fingertips or down the leg or something like that.
Exactly, radiating pain, and so if it's low back, a lot of times the person will have pain that radiates to parts of their leg, maybe all the way down to the feet, depending on which nerve root is involved or nerve is involved in that situation. And then you can have fractures, spinal fractures, right. The compression fractures and other types of fractures can be involved in a low back injury there. A lot of people have scoliosis. I've represented several who have severe scoliosis that can lead to a lot of other issues. And then, depending on what the issue is and how it's treated, a person can result in having multiple different types of surgery on their spine.
Right. And some of those spinal surgeries can actually become more and more intense as they go, ultimately leading to cages and fusion and all sorts of medical device implants and things like that, which really severely limit the mobility sometimes of the person, trying to make them feel better. But, it's a balance, I would think.
Correct. It can be, a fusion. If they have a spinal fusion, then that area of the spine, that segment of the spine, is the movement's gone.
Yeah.
Once that fusion becomes solid. Now, a lot of times the areas above and potentially below will take up the slack, so the person doesn't have as much of a decreased range of motion if it's just a single level fusion. But if you have multiple levels fused, then that can seriously decrease the range of motion the person has from that standpoint. And even if it's a single level, the levels above and below can wear out over time, which results in more problems from that. But even after a surgery, especially in the low back area, a lot of times people still have some pain. Hopefully the pain isn't as bad, or sometimes the surgery is done to remove whatever is pinching the nerve, so that the person no longer has the nerve pain that can ultimately, if the nerve is pinched bad enough or long enough, can affect the ability to use the leg properly,
right.
or wherever it goes to.
I thought that was an interesting point you made, that sometimes if there is a fusion, let's say there's 2 or 3 vertebrae that are fused together, the other areas try to overcompensate to make up for that change in the normal movement, and it can cause them to wear out even quicker now because they're doing something that they weren't ideally designed to do.
Right. That's what's been explained to me by neurosurgeons that I've talked to in representing my clients. They're usually refer to it as adjacent segment disease, which is basically the segment of the spine that is immediately adjacent to the fused site will wear out quicker.
Yeah, it's almost like a domino effect in some regards.
Can be. Unfortunately, I've represented clients in the past who have had, one level fused and then ultimately ended up with another surgery and have 4 or 5 levels fused before it's all over with.
Right, and that's a tough situation because ideally you're trying to alleviate pain, but it's painful getting there. And,
yes,
and you just don't know at the end of it. So let's talk about some other types of injuries. I mean, we've talked about obviously a herniated disc, where if I'm lifting something, or maybe I've been involved in some type of an impact, maybe a car wreck, and I've got that sudden twisting or jolting, I can actually rupture a disc to a certain point. So you get those kind of issues. But what other types of issues are you seeing? I mean, you've done this for 30 years, and you anywhere from car wrecks to workplace injuries to just other types of injuries. The back really controls a lot of stuff. I mean, until you have back problems, you don't realize how good you have it.
Correct, and what can develop with any you have the herniated disc or ruptured disc. Basically, the terms are used interchangeably. And then you can have the bulging disc, which I mentioned earlier, from that standpoint, and a pinched nerve. And the nerve doesn't really care what's pinching it. It doesn't care if the disc is herniated, if the disc is bulged, or if it's a bone spur from basically kind of like arthritis developing in the spine over time. All the nerve knows is something is something is causing an impingement, and then the pain is there, and it's going to be essentially very similar pain regardless of what the cause is of the impingement from that standpoint. So, it's and then as far as the fractures, like I mentioned, compression fractures, you can have burst fractures, and surgeries can cause rod screws, bone plugs, and things of that nature to be put in. Which in and of themselves can cause additional problems for a person.
Well, and you're always worried about the complications. You could get an infection. You could have other issues down the road. My dad was in a really bad accident and had rods, down along his spinal column, and it was always painful. That was the sad thing about it. He was always in pain. I mean, he seemed to live on a leave. I remember that back in the day. But yeah, the back controls so many things, and if you're trying to work, a lot of times it's going to prevent you from returning to the same type of job. Maybe you've got all sorts of work restrictions. You're not lifting as much. You can't lift over your head. Just range of motion issues, all sorts of things. This is life altering.
Correct. If you've had a back surgery, especially low back surgery, any spinal surgeries can be a life altering surgery. My experience has been over my 30 years of doing this that people who have low back surgeries tend to still have some level of pain even after the surgery, hopefully substantially less than what they had before the surgery. At least in my experience, cervical spine surgeries tend to be more successful as far as completely eliminating someone's pain.
And the cervical means up toward the neck, right? The upper section of the spinal column.
Correct.
I guess in the middle, that's the thoracic, right?
The middle where the rib cage is, so to speak, is the thoracic spine. You don't see, I don't see anyway, as many surgeries in that area. You don't have as much movement in there because of the rib cage, for one thing, from that, but also that area is where your vital organs are, so they try to avoid doing surgeries in that area. Usually, it's where you have significant burst fractures and things like that, where it's just you've got to do surgery, or the person's going to be paralyzed. That you see the problems in that area, at least from my experience from there. But then but surgery in any area of the spine, whether it is the neck, thoracic, or lower back, can cause a person to have disability, some sort of disability, whether it's partial disability or total disability. It depends on a variety of things, and that's where the Social Security side of it comes in to play from there. And whether your back problems are going to cause you to be disabled, it depends on a few different things. First, what is your what's your past work been? If your past work has been doing heavy construction and labor type activities, and you have a back injury, it's much more likely that injury is going to keep you from going back to doing a job where you had to lift 7,500 pounds carrying out your job duties versus someone who, like me, is an attorney, or someone who's doing much more sedentary type occupation like that, where the lifting requirements are substantially less, bending over and those type of requirements are substantially less. More likely you're going to be able to get back into doing that more sedentary type of job than someone who's going to be able to go back into doing a much heavier job, such as construction and heavy labor activities.
Well, Jeff, as you've always told me, as an attorney, your heaviest muscles are up in your head, so I understand that. So that's where you do your heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis. So, what type of, when it comes to, again, applying for Social Security disability, what type of medical, evaluations am I going to have to go to? I mean, is it similar to comp, and then I've got to go through my normal treatments, my surgeries to get to a maximum medical improvement level? I mean, is that similar as it is in comp?
To some extent. First, for Social Security purposes, your condition has to be expected to be disabling for greater than 12 months.
Okay.
And that's so, if you have a herniated disc, you have surgery 6-8 months later, you're back at work, it's not going to generate a Social Security disability claim. Thankfully, you're better off back at work if you can get back to work. And so how long the condition is expected to last makes a difference on whether you can pursue a Social Security disability claim. Now, a lot of times people don't expect a condition to be totally disabling greater than 12 months, but then find out 10 months down the road, this isn't getting better. Even I've had surgery, now I'm going to have more surgery, and I'm still going to be disabled. So sometimes when you initially think it's not going to be, and then find out later that unfortunately it is going to be disabling for greater than 12 months. So that's the first thing. If the condition is not going to be totally disabling for that length of time, then hopefully you have, if you listen to other podcasts, hopefully you've taken my advice and have purchased short-term disability, and you can rely on the short-term and or long-term disability to pay while you're off work, and then hopefully recover very well and are able to get back to work from that setting. But if you're not, then and you're getting close to that year time frame, and okay, this is going to last longer than that, then you can look at applying for Social Security disability. And what Social Security is going to look at is a couple of different things. One, they are going to get your medical records. So if you've got a back injury but you're not seeing a doctor for it, not getting any medical treatment, and you've worked up until May of 2022 and you haven't seen the doctor for your low back problem since 2005, Social Security is going to deny that claim, and there's not going to be a whole lot that an attorney is going to be able to do for you until you get some medical documentation of what's going on in your back. So yes, you need to be treating for your condition and have medical proof that you do in fact have this condition and how severe the condition is for you. From there, Social Security at times will also send people to a doctor for an evaluation called a consultative examination, and so you may have to go to that type of an examination as well, and have them look at it from that perspective. And then Social Security is, whether it's early on when they're making the decision or when you're at a hearing and have an attorney involved at the reconsideration or at the hearing level, what the attorney is going to be trying to do is to establish one of two things as a general rule. One is whether your condition meets what's called the listings of impairment. The listings of impairment are a set of Social Security regulations. So if you have this condition with these complications, you're considered disabled.
And I believe in a previous episode we kind of went through that list. So if you're able to read the show notes, so when you listen to this podcast, a lot of times you'll see a bunch of paragraphs of information right below the player there. Those are called show notes, and I'll put a link to that previous episode if you're interested in learning more about those situations.
And one of the categories is musculoskeletal issues, which the spinal column falls within. So there are listings of impairment that deal with spinal column issues for low back, neck, etc. So if your condition meets one of those listings, you're going to be considered disabled. Again, that's going to be a doctor question. You can't just go in there and say, yeah, I meet this listings. You've got to have medical documentation that you do meet those listings of impairment. And frankly, it's that's the least common way that a person is found disabled, is that they meet the listings of impairment. The other is then based on what restrictions your problem causes you, and how that affects your ability to work from that standpoint. Social Security calls it your residual functional capacity. That's what the judge is ultimately going to be determining, is what's your residual functional capacity. So what work restrictions are placed on you? Can you lift 10 pounds or can you lift up to 25 pounds? Can you sit 2 hours at a time and 6 hours out of an 8-hour day, or can you stand 2 hours at a time and 6 hours out of an 8-hour day, or are you limited both of those activities to 20 minutes, or you can sit 20 minutes, then you got to change positions, you can stand 20 minutes, you got to do something else from that. So those are the things that ultimately the judge is going to be looking at in making a decision on whether you're disabled. And the standards change as we get older as well, to some extent. First change is at age 50. When you're looking at residual functional capacity and what jobs you can go back to. So the first change comes in at age 50, and then there's another change again at age 55. And so that makes a difference. If you're 30 years old and you've done heavy labor type activities, well, your ability to to regroup and get into a less physically demanding job is going to be greater than a 62-year-old who's never done anything but heavy labor type activities. And at least that's the way Social Security looks at it.
Well, I would think the Social Security judge is going to look at that 30-year-old and say, look, you potentially have another 25 years ahead of you in work capacity or career world. Yeah, you could get some retraining possibly, and you could do something different. So I guess that's kind of what they're doing.
I think that's the basis behind the regulations that
I don't know if
provide
they actually
for that.
admit that, but that's kind of reasonable.
I don't know that they ever come out and say that, but I think that is at least a legitimate reason behind why those regulations are the way they are from that standpoint. And then, they're going to look at your educational background as well, even if you've done heavy work, but you have a college degree, and that will allow you to go directly into a sedentary type of job that falls within the college degree that you have, that they're going to look at that person differently than someone who's done heavy manual labor all their life and they have less than a high school education. So
it's just going to be harder to find.
Exactly. So all of those factors, your age, your educational level, and the physical restrictions placed on you are all factors that the judge and the Social Security Administration are going to be looking to in determining whether you are or are not entitled to Social Security disability benefits.
And if I am deemed disabled, I say, okay, yep, I'm gonna do this. Let's. Do I ever have an option of coming back from that, or is it a one-way street?
No, it's not a one-way street. You do have an option of returning back to work, and in fact, Social Security will kind of encourage you to do that. They have a program to allow people to attempt to return to work to see if they can work without them having to go through the entire process again. So if you've been on disability and if you're on Social Security disability and you think, okay, I think I've improved some and I think I can go back to work, or I've gone back to school and I've got more education and skills now than I had when I was on disability and I want to try to go back to work, you can do that and be able to get back into the work market. Social Security will look at it. You need to notify them you're going to do that when you start earning money. So they're aware of it from that standpoint, and they will look and see if you're able to last for a period of time. I didn't look at it before I came in here, but my recollection is you've got to work 9 months, and then they will 9 months in a rolling 5-year period, if I recall. And so once you get to that, and they will look at it and say, okay, we think you are able to work or not, but they will kind of look and say, all right, you stick it to work. You're back at work now, so we're going to take away your Social Security disability at this point. They'll give you notice before they do that.
Right.
From that standpoint, but
the assumption is you're going to make more.
You're going to make more working. Obviously, is the assumption from that standpoint. But if you tried and you're in 3 months and you say, this is killing me, I can't do this, I'm missing work, and my pain's increasing, and I'm having more problems.
It's just too much.
And you stop work, you notify Social Security again, say, look, I tried it, I made it 2 months, and that's all I could make it, or 3 months, and that's all I could make it. They will make note in it. Your checks will continue to come in, and you don't have to refile. You don't have to go through that whole process again.
Right. Now that you kind of go through that, I believe we did cover more in detail in a previous episode about that topic. So again, in the show notes, I'll go back and find that one, and then I'll be sure that we link back to that for additional information for anybody that's listening and interested. Yeah,
and I tell people a lot when I'm meeting with them here in my conference room, this is my viewpoint, but a lot of people and a lot of psychologists that I've talked to share this, and at least in my opinion, if you're able to work, you're better off physically, mentally, and financially working if you can work. Sometimes injuries are severe, you can't, and that's the reason we have Social Security disability. Absolutely. And we have SSI disability. That's the safety nets we have in place, and I'm glad they should be there in place. But if you're, and I've talked to a lot of people who have been out of work for a period of time because of an injury, and until you're in that situation, you don't really understand the mental wear that is placed on someone who's worked 30 years of their life, and all of a sudden, they had their future all planned out, and then all of a sudden, because of a car wreck or a work injury or whatever, now everything they had been planning and working toward is in jeopardy from that standpoint. And unfortunately, a lot of people place their self-worth on their job and on how much they're earning and things of that nature, and so it can have a huge mental impact on someone when they are not able to work and earn a living for themselves and for their family.
Oh, that is understandable. I mean, again, there's that. Yeah, you're going to deal with a whole bunch of things, and sometimes talking to a counselor is another. We've talked about that in previous episodes. Talking to a counselor and at least getting some different perspectives on things is valuable, and it's something
Absolutely.
that we always try to advocate whenever that comes up.
Yes.
Jeff, the Social Security programs are federal in nature, and you're licensed, so you can actually handle Social Security claims across the United States, right?
Correct. I am only licensed in the state of Kentucky. That's where I'm licensed to practice law, but the Social Security Administration, has licensed me to handle Social Security cases in all 50 states. And so I can handle Social Security cases anywhere. And I've handled cases in multiple different states now. In fact, probably within the last month or so, I had my first hearing with a Social Security judge in Oklahoma on the case that I'm handling out of Oklahoma now. And so I've handled cases in multiple different states.
And I know here in this part of Western Kentucky, we're not far at all from Tennessee. We've got Southern Illinois, fairly close, and a few other states as well. But that's nice to know that if people enjoyed what they heard today, like how you present things, how you explain things, even though they're not right here in Christian County or Calloway County, they can still contact you, and it's possible that you could actually represent them for their Social Security claim.
Correct. In fact, there's a lot where I'm located here in Murray and Hopkinsville. Both of those are fairly close to the Tennessee state line, as you just mentioned. And there are people who live in Tennessee, work in Kentucky, and had a work injury, and I was able to, because of my fact that I'm licensed by Social Security in all 50 states, able to handle their Kentucky workers' compensation claim and their Social Security disability claim that was actually based out of Tennessee, because that's where they live at from that standpoint. So even though I'm located in Kentucky, I can handle those cases all over. And I have, for people who are out of the area, I have an 800 number to make it a little easier for people to reach out to me without them incurring costs. The 800 number, if someone needs to call me, that using that number, you can call me at 1-800-844-5108, or now with cell phones and things of that nature, we don't have as many long-distance phone charges as we used to. And if you want to use the listed number, it's 270-753-0053. Goes to the exact same phone regardless of which one of those two you call.
Outstanding. Jeff, thanks for your time today. Really excited to hear about the Social Security claim you're handling in the state of Oklahoma. That's kind of interesting, obviously.
Yes.
Again, I thanks for your time, and I hope the information here was helpful. So, Jeff, we'll be back in about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.